The lives of Latinos and Jacobus Capitin share notable similarities, yet their experiences diverge significantly in key areas. While Latino engaged with influential European royalty and the elite class in Granada, Capitin faced more constrained circumstances. The paths of both individuals underscore the reliance of African Europeans on the goodwill of the affluent. However, the exploration of masculinity typically present in the dynamic between white masters and black males is often overlooked in discussions surrounding these figures. Like Latino, Capitin's life was molded by religion, opportunity, and identity. He emerged from a European educational system that granted him certain privileges due to his perceived exceptionalism. Capitin also served as a conduit for the European elite's colonial aspirations. He exemplified what Gomez describes as the middling or buffer class, which acted as a signifier of modernity. Little is known about Capitin's formative years, but at around 7 years old, he was purchased by Dutch sea captain Arnout Steenhart, who transported him to Shama and the Gold Coast and presented him to Jacob van Gogh, a merchant aligned with the powerful West India Company, WIC. Their relationship, as depicted in Capitin's writings, was characterized by a paternal bond, reflecting notions of paternalism discussed by scholars like Eugene D. Genovese and components of Stanley Elkin's Sambo thesis. Historically, paternalism allowed slave owners to justify their actions as benevolence while also serving as a means for enslaved people to navigate oppression and assert agency in their lives. Notably, Capitin did not acknowledge his own history as an enslaved child. There is a lack of discourse surrounding the global implications of Dutch involvement in the enslavement of Africans, as well as the WIC's role in the colonization of the Americas. Capitin's existence was shaped by a global market that commodified human lives, leaving him seemingly devoid of control over his body and spirit. He was just one among many Africans entangled in the quest for wealth that enriched European nations. Even before his birth, the Dutch Republic had already begun to contest Portuguese and Spanish territories in the Americas and West Africa. The Dutch engaged in Atlantic enslavement from as early as 1619, when 20 Africans were shipped to Virginia. Over the next 3 decades, they fought to seize Portuguese plantations in Brazil amid the Dutch-Portuguese Wars, driven by the conflicting religious convictions of Catholics and devout Dutch Calvinists, as well as disputes over royal successions. European conflicts over religion and territory necessitated the acquisition of gold, making African territories critical for both parties. In 1637, the Dutch captured Elmina Castle and expanded their reach into other West African regions like São Tomé and present-day Angola. By 1650, the Dutch Republic had established a fleet of 16,000 merchant vessels and controlled numerous trading posts along the West African coast, even settling in Cape Colony, South Africa. However, their territorial conquests failed to satiate their hunger for land and resources, continuing their relentless pursuit of Portuguese holdings in Brazil. A pivotal moment came in 1690 when they began supplying the Portuguese with various goods, including enslaved Africans. The latter half of the 17th century saw Amsterdam rise as a prominent trading hub, with the Dutch West India Company, founded in 1621, regulating trade to replicate the successes of the Dutch East India Company established in 1602. Governor-General Jan Pieterszoon Cohen, known for his violent conquests in the Banda Islands, legitimized the use of enslaved labor in the Americas. The Dutch sought legal justification for their aggressive colonial policies, consulting esteemed jurists like Hugo Grotius, who advocated for Dutch war prizes. In 1625, legislation was enacted permitting the WIC to engage in slave ownership, leading to the stockpiling of sugar, tobacco, and cotton products from enslaved laborers in Amsterdam. During the 17th century, Amsterdam became a trading powerhouse, rivaling Lisbon and Seville during the Dutch Golden Age. The United Provinces established itself as the European epicenter for overseas commerce, excelling in manufacturing, banking, and navigation. The quest for commodities spurred innovations in shipping, notably the Flight, a lighter and more efficient vessel that benefited Dutch merchants. While places like Zeeland and Vlissingen had previously resisted the slave trade, by 1759, Zeeland had come to view the transatlantic slave trade as vital to its economy. Capitin arrived in the Dutch Republic at a time when measures were being implemented to control the influx of enslaved individuals from the Americas and Africa, a context intertwined with long-standing debates about the freedom and legal status of oppressed people. proponents of enslavement often engaged in discussions about liberty and humanity. The Valladolid debate of 1550 between Juan Gines de Sepúlveda and Bartolomé de las Casas highlighted contrasting views on the legal status of the colonized in the Americas. Las Casas opposed the enslavement of fellow humans, especially indigenous peoples, on moral grounds, while Dutch Calvinists and traders appeared to harbor no such hesitations. Capetine's status in the Netherlands was ambiguous. The presence of people of African descent raised moral and ethical questions around enslavement, yet by the 17th century, such presence had largely been normalized in the Dutch Republic. The reluctance to legally recognize the presence of black individuals was coupled with the necessity for authorities to address the issue in certain instances, as evidenced by the documentation and burial sites of the Portuguese Jewish community in Amsterdam, which indicate a long-standing black presence in the city. Records from October 1625 reveal that enslaved individuals brought to Amsterdam by Portuguese slave owners retained their status while in the city, but burial records after 1617 omitted the term slave despite noting individuals' servant status and skin color. The unease exhibited by authorities was more about the Dutch Republic's involvement in slavery than the presence of black individuals. Dutch ambivalence regarding slavery became a defining characteristic of its policy. The story of Juliana, a young enslaved girl bought by Portuguese trader Eliao Burgos in Recife, illustrates the complexities of legal status and personal agency. After several years, Burgos brought Juliana to Amsterdam, where she learned that slavery was not recognized, leading her to assert her freedom. However, her fate remained uncertain as Burgos sought to bind her to a contract in Barbados, highlighting the challenges faced by both enslaved individuals and their owners in navigating the legal landscape regarding freedom. Capetine's contributions to the discourse on slavery and education reflect the broader societal tensions of his time. Arriving in Middelburg in 1728, he traveled with Van Gogh to The Hague, where he encountered Johann Philip Manger, a minister whose influence was pivotal in shaping Capetine's perspective. The 1730s marked a high point for the Dutch Republic in trade and culture, fostering a sense of pride among citizens, including Capetine. Under Manger's mentorship, Capetine learned French and contemplated attending university, ultimately enrolling at Leiden University in 1737. Capetine gained prominence during his viva at Leiden in 1742, presenting a thesis titled Politico-Theological Dissertation Concerning Slavery, as not contrary to Christian freedom. He argued that while the Bible did not endorse slavery, it promoted spiritual freedom over earthly emancipation for enslaved individuals. His views aligned with the Calvinist emphasis on piety over personal desires for liberation. Capetine's lectures garnered significant attention, and he undertook a tour to promote his works, although he faced criticism for his stance on slavery. Despite his privileged upbringing and exceptional education, Capetine's understanding of the lived experiences of enslaved individuals was likely limited. His environment in The Hague was not as multicultural as Amsterdam, and he may not have fully grasped the realities faced by those he sought to educate and convert. While he adhered to the prevailing views of Dutch Calvinists regarding slavery, his religious outlook was seen as relatively progressive. Influenced by the liberal and rationalist ideas of Johannes Cocceius, Capetine's understanding of biblical teachings shaped his approach to issues of race and faith. Capetine's decision to travel to Africa in 1742 may have been influenced by his association with the Reformed Church and fellow minister Jan Willem Cals, who advocated for the conversion of both indigenous and enslaved.